And now the first series of images. The first series was made for Tallinn. Better to say 2007. It was in Kumu, a very important conference, where in this room, among others, Piotr Bryoksovsky gave a brilliant lecture on Eastern Europe, and he was the second person who could deliver important information for me about the Hungarian art, because Piotrowski was who not only Polish art specialist was, but went all around, and he presented pictures from the 40s of Hungarian artists. The second one, meanwhile, it was a meeting organized mostly European Council under the leadership of Henry Mary Hughes, under the title Art in the Totalitarian Systems, and especially in after 45. And then I presented the same pictures, and I think Ruben was here, Ruben and Maya was here because I met them first time, and maybe they remember my pictures. In this, there is the whole Hungarian history after the 45, I mean the end of the Second World War, and I'm very big to not to show everything. This is Admiral Horthy, the governor of Hungary at the end of the 20th century, when he even thinks that we got back Slovakia. The same happened in Transylvania, part of Transylvania. Then Horthy was taken away first by the real Nazis in Budapest, and then he got an emigre in Portugalia. Very famous and absolutely important pictures just after the war. In Hungary, everybody knows them. I think it's all the world. Well, now the Soviet soldiers put the Russian flag in the top of the Reichstag in Berlin. And because in the early 60s, in the 70s, I made an article for the Hungarian official art magazine, Művészet, about Endre Bálint and his photo montages. I mentioned that he was working with famous photos, including this, and the redactor told it's impossible to present in our magazine, and asked why. No answer. Why? No answer. No, it was not published, and I was very upset and asked everybody, what was the reason? And an older fellow of mine told, you are crazy. You see the soldier, the officer downstairs, here, and on hand is full of stolen watches. And I didn't believe it was retouched on the screen. I went to the Reichstag, I went everywhere. During 20 years research was me, I didn't find nothing. At the end arrived, something went wrong? It's okay? Good. Finally, Yevgeny Kaldei, the photographer, appeared even in Budapest with his age of 90 about, and declared that it's true, the history is true, that has to be retouched. The photo was taken 3 days after the fighting. It's an installed photo, and I went forward. It's an unpublished, till now unpublished photo of Yevgeny Kaldei when the Russian soldiers put the flag on the Hungarian Reichstag, the parliament building. And then he went to the ghetto, Yevgeny Kaldei. He met there his relatives, this couple, make the pictures because they are from the Carpat, Ukraine, Hungarians, and still the story of Yevgeny Kaldei. Some disastrous events just after the Second World War, and then a jump, which is already of the totalitarian system. This is our Szálasi, it was the Hungarian Nazis leader executed just after the war, and still sceneries from the war, and a very symbolical photo. It can be socialist realist photo to distribute the fields for the peasants. And a friend of mine, a historian, told that, listen, this is from a film which was made 10 years later, but it went to the Hungarian agency of news like an original from 45. These are all statists and actors. Very famous photo, I don't tell, and then we start to our Stalinism, and we arrive to our Rákosi, the Hungarian, just in the middle. And this is Rákosi coming back to Moscow, to taking the power. Right side is László Beke, interior minister, absolute communist interior minister, who was executed after a fake trial in 95 or 50, like a spion of the Yugoslavian Tito, which was not true, but another important person, Imre Nagy, who converted in 56 revolution, a Muscovite who became revolutionist, executed later as well. You understand how it's produced, a portrait for May Day, 1st May, about Rákosi. Very important Hungarian sculptures. Rákosi is checking the work of the art on the fields. We start with the socialist realism. It's how young mothers learns to be mother under the Schirmherrschaft, under the umbrella of Stalin, Lenin, and Rákosi. This is the young László Beke, became later a very important architect and artist in Hungary, also today, and he is his father was killed. It is on his burial, and then the demolition of the Stalin monument. The story of the Stalin monument, which was built in 51, I think, is a long, long story. I want to show only one details which probably I discovered after the changing of our regime in the archives of the Ministry of Interior, because it was not public before. It's the first night when the sculpture is demolished and only rest the boots. And that's why people told that the two-day square of heroes became square of boots. Here is it, just after the October 3rd of 56 in Budapest. Symbols. Now, here is a very important action. We agree with the former speakers who was speaking about individual mythologies. This is a work of Miklós Erdély. The story is that in the days of the revolution, 56, the show windows was broken. It was a kind of disaster, but in the same time, the association of the writers put boxes on the street with the poster, the cleanness of the revolution allows us to collect money for the martyrs of the revolution in this way, such a way. And then people wanted to put the guard, National Guard, to guard the money, but the artist told that no, it can be intact, nobody will stolen, and at the evening we take it and distribute it. No, and this action after 30 years was declared the copyright of Miklós Erdély, the one of the biggest avant-garde artists in the second part of the world, posteriori. So when Joseph Beuys declared his burning is a first action, he declared Miklós Erdély as the first happening of him after 30 years old. Another question that he was not alone, he was about 10 other artists and writers who then put together. We interviewed everybody. However, it became canonized like the work of Miklós Erdély, the unguarded money. János Major, one of the lynched Hungarian KGB agent, a soldier, and then a jump again to Tamás Szentjóby. A lot of people knows him, like the first happening people, but it's again a story. This is a Prague Radio 68, and probably not everybody knows what is the story, that in the 68 events in Prague, Russian soldiers, better to say Soviet soldiers, confiscated the portable radios, which was heard on the street. And then it's the legend, after seeing this, people take bricks, put covered in paper, and then go there. And Soviet soldier take it away, and what is it? Now this is a memory of the 68 from Tamás Szentjobbin. Again, demonstrations, and the private demonstration of Dora Maurer, now about 80 years old, an avant-garde lady, who went in the beginning of 70 in her studio. It went round and round and round half a year with on a red material to get a red demonstration trace here. Made a demonstration, and now I make a stop. This is the most canonized, emblematic photography of the Hungarian avant-garde, sickle and hammer of János Pincehelyi. I don't want to tell a lot of stories, because one is with Maya and Ruben Fox, who has another interpretation to me, but anyhow is made and is in the same time a self-portrait. I forgot to tell before that I think everybody knows that last year was the year of the word selfie, because selfie started, and now I wonder in Tallinn how many people are going with tripod of selfies go around, because I think as a medial news in the whole world. In that time, you understand that Sándor Pincehelyi tried to make to be an actor of several pictures. For instance, is a pharaoh, is an Egyptian pharaoh making this gesture with two utils. And I have to tell that it belongs to the story. In that time, young artist in Hungary, and put the question in which measure was working together with the authorities, and the group of Page, this young avant-garde group, also made some posters for instance, for the big Russian Revolution of 1917, and such kind of paintings was used in the same time for official posters to celebrate, and then make like the criticism of the same. And the career of this painting, this picture, is until the biennial of Venice, where I have been, and I see the post in this one, but as graffiti in the streets of Venice, and because it was not made by Pincehelyi, but the today Italian Communist Party in Venice, which is very powerful. I think this is one of the most emblematic painting of the Perestroika, made by a Hungarian photographer, a reporter, the Lenin portrait on the facade of Lubyanka. You know what is Lubyanka? Is taken away, and the title is Sunset. And it's, I think is understandable, except that there are some very interesting background discussions in Hungary, that this Tavarisi Kanyec is a work of István Orosz and is in all bigger museums like Albertina, it's the Museum of Applied Art, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. But I have to tell you that older left people that I don't like this kind of photo because is a kind of appeal to kill. It's an exhibition made by myself in the National Gallery, Signs of Change posters, but curiously enough, in 1990, is a Yugoslavian-born artist emigrated to Hungary, made it, very important. I have seen it, and I asked, what does that mean? Signs of change. My question was, if the workers was against the peasants and liquidate the peasants, what's it? But it was too late to take away, and very few people understand that it's a very bad poster. The same Pincehelyi, and then is a very interesting exhibition, part of a series of I think it's the 2004 or 5, has asked it from Ruben and Maya because he was the organizer of this in Budapest. When was it? Okay, thank you. Now, with this kind of exhibitions, started in Hungary a very profound and very important reinterpretation of the whole stories of the totalitarian area or socialist area. Okay, then I start to see if I still have time, some minutes left. I want to participate with other painting, other pictures on the debate, how was architecture and public places and the synthesis of the art during the socialism in Hungary. And I think it's a very characteristic and a little bit different socialist, realist architecture than other pieces, even in Lithuania, because it's partly the Zdanovian Soviet idea and partly a very nationalistic one, because Zdanov declared the socialist realist architecture is the international in the form of the national. And this is a very, I wouldn't say a very stupid, but very contradictory maxima. And here is the this is the museum, this is the Academy of Applied Art in Budapest, which looks like, as in the facade, like the 19th century classicist buildings in the countryside. The same style than in St. Petersburg in 19th century or everywhere. And it can be like a secret opposition against the Muscovite style. Another example, this is the Pannonia Film Studio in Hungary in the style of the Moscow metro, I would say simply. And now the real problem. Then this is prototype of an architecture which I could say modernist and socialist realist in the same time. This is the headquarters of the architect, the Association of Architects, constructed in 1954. Several architects was working together, which was following the Bauhaus tradition, but in the middle of the Communist Party was a very hard discussion about József Révai, the hardcore Muscovite, criticized it, that is a imperialist style of cosmopolitan architecture. And Máté Major, an academic, he spent a lot of time in jail in Moscow and come back as a KGB agent, a secret KGB agent, started to make a reform after the Second World War from the ruins. And then he opposed and he told that we follow, this is our communist tradition in the 50s. Now a small example, very important for you, Estonian, I think, when I say that this is, the whole complex is the central bus station in Budapest, Deák tér, which was always a subject of discussion, and why. Two important communist and modernist architects who survived after the Second World War, Nyíri and Lauber, constructed it, and it's a pretty nice modernist building in the 50s. The later events at the moment, it's the design terminal is a pretty nice center for exhibitions. In my opinion, is absolutely not good for exhibition reasons, but several discussions I participate, also telling no, others yes. Now is a kind of postmodern institution. But look at the right side. It's from stones, local stones. And the local stones is a very interesting thing in the cosmopolitan, functionalist Bauhaus architecture. It doesn't exist. This comes over from the cult of the nature of the Hitlerian Heimatkunst, Heimat architecture, if you know what I mean. And I remember but I think it was not here, but rather in Warsaw, when Steven Mansbach, I consider him one of the number one expert of Eastern Europe from Washington and now in New York. He presented a lot of architecture in the so-called Baltic countries. It was his collection for everywhere, but he was not aware in these very fine details. What is local, what is rather Heimatkunst from Nazi Kunst, what is modernism. It was a very complicated ideological problem. Socialist realism, now as maybe I show you later, because I had another narrative for Estonian art, this part of Estonian art. Now rather one, for me, very funny paintings in Moscovite style of socialist realism of the 50s. Sometimes the painter is interesting, sometimes forget. He is forgotten totally, or she. This is how Korean students and Hungarian students together seeing the globe. I could open another discussion about globalization in the 50s. This is an early example. Pioneers. This is a Hungarian, as not Soviet, seaman. And imagine that Hungary, there is a Danube, which is very important for military aspect. It was always the how to tell this kind of ship which is going and where it is something happening, then they have machine guns and from the Danube shooting the two parts, workers. And now this is the most kitschy and most important painting of this period, the piffing conductor, lady conductor. Everybody loved this photo. Absolute lost, and the collector found it in some caves or something. And now, by the way, maybe somebody know the author Gábor Rieder, because he wrote his diploma work on Estonian art 10 years ago about, now working as well. And these two paintings I want to show again. It's, yeah. First this one. The title is The Tree Lecturer. And that's a very symbolic one because lecturer are, in a normal term, is the censor. Three censors who checked all books in articles in the reviews. However, it was never told that in Hungary there is censorship, but there was. But the three are three excellent writers in Hungary. The left one was the editor of New Hungarian Quarterly. The second one, Domokos Pál, was a literary historian. I discussed with him because I wrote about this painting with my wife, and he didn't like his role. Where we told, and the three one is Rész Pál, who is an editor of the review Holmi, a very good artist. And there is a very famous Hungarian painter, Tibor Czernus, died about 5 years ago, who introduced in Hungary the so-called surnaturalism. Surnaturalism was a mixture of surrealism and naturalism and hyperrealism, mostly in Paris. But when we was writing about the painting, he censored our opinion. Better to say, he said, "I don't like if you speak about socialist realism." And it was a very interesting debate in the time, in 54 or so. The Communist Party was absolute against him because considered it's decadent. See in the vase the tulip in the left side, which is very pessimistic. It's not go upstairs, but it's pessimistic. And the whole picture is totally pessimistic. And my professors, who was young and was radical for the new, was defending this painting. It's a very, very, very important thing. That's I already show Yuri Arek. For me it was very important in a time Tony Swint, when I have been here already in the 90s, and his group. Now back to our last painting, which is about nothing, is Szőnyi István. It's a very characteristic painting. When he was first time one of the most important official painter in Hungary, making panels for the Hungarian metro, which was absolutely the same, the Moscow metro, but he declared that he is against Soviet painting. He wants to keep a so-called postmodernism, and this is after the raining, how the reflexes and the painting's quality is still alive. And now a jump in the history, when Miklós Erdély, our hero, real hero of the avant-gardism, started to paint in his last period in the 80s, he told for him, this is the example of painting. And it's ideologically this painting means nothing. It's very nice, and with the nothingness, with reductivity, Miklós Erdély considered as a conceptualist painting. And now it's the endless discussion of the art historians, and so on. I think this is also over. I try to explain again that for me, Eastern Europe is, in my life, from very different reasons, is important, because when I was student at the university, in Budapest, and was starting from Mosonmagyaróvár, the countryside, which was close to Slovakia. And it was the most modest, more normal thing to go out the other side and so on. However, a deep, profound fight was between Slovakians and Hungarians, and that's why I started to learn Slovak language during 2 years to demonstrate that it's possible to work together. If the society cannot work, then artists could work together. And I think it was a good idea with my Eastern Europe stories. And at the end, there is a long history of 40 years or more. I arrived to Lublin, where Piotr Piotrowski's idea was already on the third stage. We started to discuss with each other in Krakow about 10 years when he told, Eastern Europe is the following. We have to accept that we are living in a global situation. We cannot do anything against that. We have to speak with each other English. This is the situation. We have to be global. And I told, okay, Piotr, but I want to keep local characters. I didn't want to tell national. Now, as a second problem, left side or liberal people or globalization people doesn't like nationalism. The word nationalism is a long discussion. When we went over to Košice ICA Congress, I think 2 years ago, then the title was Black Holes and White Spaces. When I declared in my lecture the white holes and the black spaces are nationalism, and in Slovakia, I told, and what is art, what we are speaking. Piotr was one step further because he declared his new direction, peripheries of our world unite. And it was a remarkable one, and he proved it with his researches with Argentine, the connection Latin America to Hungary, to Poland and Eastern Europe. The Slovakians during this conference presented Gyula Košice. If you have some feeling, Košice is a Slovak name of Košice, Kašau, and Gyula Košice was a Hungarian Jew in Košice, still alive, and he became a kind of emblem of this ICA Congress. And that was Piotr. In this research of Latin America, Eastern Europe, there are a lot of people from us who participates already. Clara Kemp, for instance, knows very well. And then I would say, in the name of Piotr, parallel histories and peripheries unites. What is periphery in the term of postmodern? Center and periphery. And I don't continue. I think the direction is good. Now, in Lublin, I presented post-contemporary, telling again one step further, not only in art to achieve a kind of artist like also Kwiek or new people who understand the postmodern, understand post-socialist, understand post-communist, and let's try to do something. And here are some results of my recent exhibition in Budapest called Post-Contemporary, and some of them, with the last one, Tibor Kaszás, he was well known already in Lublin. Can I make it bigger, or still I have 30 seconds? Which one? Yeah, from a video declaring that Tamás Kaszás and Lakatos Anikó doesn't exist more as artist, it's as ex-artist formation. This is the so-called realistic society, Gro Ferenc, with a work of avant-garde, Gothic or confused or condensed or whatever, a new money in Stanov Masar from Bratislava, which is a situation after the negotiation, a video, and I don't explain you to try to understand that it's a boring post-contemporary art, international. Thank you very much.